There is a prison that holds millions of people. Its walls cannot be seen. Its bars cannot be touched. Its chains make no sound. Yet it is one of the most powerful prisons in human existence. People enter it as children. Many remain there for their entire lives. Some die inside it without ever realizing they were captive. This prison is the fear of other people's opinions. Think about how much of your life has been shaped by invisible audiences. The clothes you wore, the words you spoke, the dreams you pursued, the dreams you abandoned, the risks you avoided, the truths you swallowed, the versions of yourself you displayed to the world. How much of it was truly yours? And how much of it was performed for approval? Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire stretching across continents. He commanded armies, governed nations, held power beyond what most people can imagine. Yet in his private writings, he returned again and again to a lesson that remains just as relevant today as it was nearly 2,000 years ago. The opinions of others are not your concern. Simple words, yet perhaps among the most difficult truths a human being can accept. Because from the moment we enter this world, we are taught to seek approval. A child smiles and waits for praise. A student studies for recognition. An adult works for status. A citizen follows expectations. A friend seeks acceptance. A partner seeks validation. Layer upon layer, year after year, the desire for approval becomes woven into identity itself. Eventually, many people no longer know where their true self ends and public expectation begins. They become actors in their own lives, performing, adjusting, editing, calculating, constantly asking the same exhausting question. What will people think? This question silently governs countless decisions. It shapes careers, relationships, dreams, beliefs, entire lives. And yet there is something profoundly tragic hidden inside it. Most of the people whose approval we seek are fighting the same battle themselves. They too are worried about being judged. They too are seeking acceptance. They too are trapped inside invisible prisons of opinion. Imagine an entire crowd of prisoners evaluating one another's chains. This is how much of society operates. People desperately seeking validation from others who are equally uncertain. Marcus Aurelius saw through this illusion. He understood that public opinion behaves like the wind. One day it blows in your favor. The next day it turns against you. Build your identity upon it, and your peace becomes as unstable as the weather. Today people praise you. Tomorrow they criticize you. Today they admire you. Tomorrow they forget you. Today they celebrate your success. Tomorrow they resent it. Human judgment is inconsistent because human beings themselves are inconsistent. To build your happiness upon something so unstable is to guarantee suffering. Yet millions do exactly that. They hand over control of their emotional lives to strangers. A compliment lifts them. A criticism crushes them. A rejection wounds them. An approval energizes them. Without realizing it, they have surrendered authority over their inner world. Their mood belongs to the crowd. Their peace belongs to the crowd. Their confidence belongs to the crowd. And whatever belongs to the crowd can be taken away by the crowd. This is why Stoic philosophy begins with a radical act of reclamation. Take back what is yours. Your thoughts, your actions, your values, your character, your choices. These belong to you. Other people's opinions do not. The moment you understand this distinction, a new kind of freedom becomes possible. Not the freedom to control circumstances. Not the freedom to avoid criticism. Not the freedom to guarantee success. A deeper freedom. The freedom to remain yourself regardless of external judgment. Most people spend years trying to manage perception. The Stoic spends years cultivating character. Most people ask how they appear. The Stoic asks who they are. Most people seek applause. The Stoic seeks integrity. These paths lead to entirely different destinations. One creates anxiety. The other creates peace. Because appearances depend upon others. Character depends upon you. And anything dependent upon others can never provide lasting security. Imagine carrying a cup filled to the brim with water through a crowded marketplace. Every bump, every distraction, every unexpected movement threatens to spill it. This is how life feels when self-worth depends upon approval. Every criticism becomes dangerous. Every rejection becomes painful. Every disagreement becomes personal. The mind remains tense, guarded, exhausted. Now imagine placing that cup upon solid ground. The marketplace continues. People continue talking, judging, praising, criticizing, but the cup remains steady. This is the peace that emerges when self-worth is rooted internally rather than externally. The world has not changed. You have, and that changes everything. There comes a moment in life when many people begin noticing how much energy has been wasted trying to be understood, trying to be liked, trying to satisfy everyone, trying to avoid disapproval. The realization often arrives painfully, because no matter how carefully you explain yourself, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how kindly you behave, someone will dislike you. No matter how honestly you lie, someone will criticize you. No matter how much you accomplish, someone will find fault. This is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of reality. The desire for universal approval is impossible because human beings themselves are contradictory. What one person admires, another condemns. What one person praises, another mocks. What one person respects, another rejects. To seek universal approval is to chase a horizon that forever moves away. Marcus Aurelius understood this. And perhaps that is why his writings feel so timeless. He reminds us that peace begins when we stop negotiating our worth with the opinions of others. Because worth is not awarded by crowds. It is revealed through conduct, through virtue, through the quiet decisions nobody sees, through the integrity that remains when applause disappears. And in that realization, something extraordinary begins to happen. The noise starts losing its power. The fear starts loosening its grip. The need for validation begins fading. And beneath all that noise, a deeper voice finally becomes audible. Your own. For many people, that voice has been buried for so long that they barely recognize it. It speaks quietly, but the world speaks loudly. The world tells you who you should be, how you should look, what you should achieve, what you should own, what opinions you should hold, what path you should follow. And if you listen carefully, beneath all of these messages lies a single promise. If you become what others want, they will finally accept you. Yet acceptance gained through self-betrayal always comes with a hidden cost. Because every time you abandon your own judgment to secure someone else's approval, a small part of your freedom disappears. The tragedy is that this process often happens gradually, almost invisibly. A person rarely wakes up one morning and decides to surrender their authenticity. Instead, it happens through thousands of tiny compromises. A truth left unspoken. A belief hidden. A dream postponed. A boundary ignored. A desire suppressed. Each decision seems insignificant. Yet together they form a life. And eventually a person may find themselves living according to expectations they never consciously chose. The Stoics understood that the greatest danger was not external oppression. It was internal surrender. A person can live in a palace and still be enslaved. A person can possess wealth and still be imprisoned. A person can receive admiration and still be miserable. Because true slavery occurs whenever your peace depends upon forces outside your control. Marcus Aurelius knew this despite being emperor. Perhaps because he was emperor. Every day he faced criticism. Every decision invited judgment. Every action was observed. Every choice analyzed. If anyone had reason to obsess over public opinion, it was him. Yet his writings reveal a man constantly reminding himself not to become distracted by praise or criticism. He understood something profound. People judge according to their own perceptions, their own fears, their own desires, their own limitations. Most judgments reveal more about the observer than the observed. Imagine standing before 10 mirrors. Each mirror is distorted differently. One stretches your reflection. Another compresses it. Another twists it. Another darkens it. Another brightens it. Would you spend your life trying to become whatever each mirror displays? Of course not. You would recognize that the mirrors are flawed. Yet this is often how people treat their opinions of others. One person sees confidence and calls it arrogance. Another sees the same confidence and calls it strength. One person sees ambition and calls it greed. Another sees ambition and calls it purpose. One person sees independence and calls it selfishness. Another sees independence and calls it wisdom. The person has not changed. Only the interpretation has. This realization can be liberating, because it reveals the impossibility of controlling perception. No matter what you do, people will filter you through their own experiences, their own wounds, their own beliefs, their own expectations. Trying to manage all of these interpretations is like trying to control the weather. Exhausting, endless, ultimately futile. Yet countless people devote enormous energy to exactly this pursuit. They monitor reactions, analyze comments, replay conversations, imagine criticisms, anticipate judgments. Their minds become occupied not with living life, but with managing perception. And because perception can never be fully controlled, anxiety becomes constant. The Stoics proposed a radically different approach. Stop managing perception. Start managing character. Character remains within your control. Integrity remains within your control. Honesty remains within your control. Courage remains within your control. Virtue remains within your control. These things belong to you regardless of public opinion. And unlike reputation, they cannot be taken away by gossip, cannot be destroyed by misunderstanding, cannot be erased by criticism. This distinction creates extraordinary emotional freedom, because suddenly the goal changes. You are no longer trying to be admired. You are trying to be honorable. You are no longer trying to appear good. You are trying to do good. You are no longer chasing approval. You are pursuing alignment with your own values. This shift may seem subtle, but it transforms everything. The person seeking approval constantly looks outward. The person seeking virtue constantly looks inward. One becomes dependent. The other becomes free. And freedom is not merely a philosophical concept. It has practical consequences. A free person can speak truth when truth is unpopular. A free person can walk away from unhealthy relationships. A free person can refuse invitations that compromise integrity. A free person can disappoint others without abandoning themselves. This does not mean becoming cold, or indifferent, or selfish. Stoicism was never about emotional detachment from humanity. It was about liberation from unhealthy attachment to external validation. You can care about people without being controlled by them. You can love people without surrendering your identity. You can listen to others without becoming dependent upon their approval. This balance represents one of the highest forms of maturity, because it allows compassion without weakness, connection without dependency, love without self-abandonment. Many never reach this understanding. They continue chasing validation well into old age. They become prisoners of reputation, prisoners of expectations, prisoners of comparison. Their emotional state rises and falls according to public reaction. Their happiness remains fragile because it depends upon variables they cannot control. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly warned against this trap. Not because public opinion is always wrong, but because it is never stable. The crowd changes. Preferences change. Values change. Trends change. Cultural standards change. What receives praise today may receive criticism tomorrow. To anchor your identity in something so unstable is to build your home upon shifting sand. The Stoic chooses a different foundation. Not popularities, not approval, not status, character. And character possesses a remarkable quality. It remains valuable regardless of public recognition. A courageous act remains courageous whether people applaud it or ignore it. An honest act remains honest whether others approve or condemn it. A virtuous life remains virtuous even when misunderstood. This understanding gradually dissolves the fear of judgment. Not because criticism disappears, because criticism loses its authority. The opinions of others become information rather than commands, observations rather than laws, sounds rather than chains. And for perhaps the first time, the individual begins experiencing something rare. The quiet peace of belonging to themselves. Not to the crowd. Not to expectations. Not to approval. But to themselves. A peace that cannot be purchased. Cannot be inherited. Cannot be awarded. Only cultivated. And once cultivated, it becomes one of the most powerful sources of inner freedom a human being can possess. There is a reason many wise people grow quieter with age. Not because they have less to say, because they have finally learned what deserves to be said. Youth often believes every misunderstanding must be corrected. Every accusation must be answered. Every criticism must be challenged. Every false perception must be repaired. The young mind feels compelled to explain itself, to justify itself, to defend itself, to make sure everyone understands. But life teaches a difficult lesson. Not everyone wants understanding. Some people want confirmation of what they already believe. Some people want an argument. Some people want someone to blame. Some people have already decided who you are long before you speak. And no explanation can reach a mind that has chosen not to listen. Marcus Aurelius lived among people who misunderstood him. People questioned his decisions, doubted his motives, criticized his leadership. Such experiences come with any visible life. The more authentically you live, the more likely someone will misunderstand you. Because authenticity disrupts expectations. And people often react negatively when reality refuses to match their assumptions. The younger version of yourself may have fought endlessly against this reality, trying to convince everyone, trying to correct every misunderstanding, trying to manage every narrative. But eventually something changes. You begin noticing how much energy disappears into these efforts. Hours become days. Days become years. Years become decades. All spent trying to control how other people interpret your existence. And for what? Even after all the explanations, misunderstandings remain. Even after all the defenses, criticism remains. Even after all the efforts, opinions remain divided. Because perception belongs to the observer, not the observed. This realization often marks the beginning of wisdom. Not the wisdom of giving up. The wisdom of letting go. Letting go of impossible responsibilities. Letting go of emotional burdens that never belonged to you. Letting go of their exhausting task of managing other people's conclusions. There is tremendous peace in accepting that some people will never fully understand you. Not because you failed. Because human beings only see fragments of one another. No one witnesses your entire story. No one experiences your private struggles. No one fully understands your fears, sacrifices, intentions, or inner battles. People observe moments, then create narratives. And those narratives are often incomplete. A person may see your confidence and miss your years of self-doubt. See your success and miss your failures. See your calmness and miss your suffering. See your boundaries and miss the wounds that taught them. Human perception is partial by nature. Expecting complete understanding from others is expecting something reality rarely provides. The older you become, the more obvious this truth becomes. And strangely, instead of creating loneliness, it creates freedom. Because once you stop demanding perfect understanding, you stop feeling compelled to constantly explain yourself. Your life becomes your explanation. Your character becomes your explanation. Your actions become your explanation. There is something profoundly powerful about a person who no longer needs to convince anyone of who they are. Not because they are arrogant, because they are secure. Security does not shout. Security does not chase. Security does not beg for recognition. Security stands quietly within itself. Like a mountain, unaffected by passing weather, unaffected by passing opinions, unaffected by passing judgments. This is why age often brings a different relationship with silence. Silence no longer feels like weakness. It feels like strength. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves clarification. Sometimes silence communicates confidence more effectively than words ever could. Epictetus understood this deeply. He taught that if someone speaks poorly of you, you should remember that they know only a small portion of your faults. If they knew everything, they would have far more to criticize. There is profound humility in this perspective, and also profound freedom, because it removes the illusion that reputation must be protected at all costs. The Stoics were not obsessed with appearing flawless. They were concerned with becoming better. And these are entirely different goals. The person obsessed with appearance fears exposure. The person committed to growth welcomes truth. Even uncomfortable truths. Because truth improves character. Approval merely comforts the ego. As the years pass, many wise individuals naturally shift their attention away from image and toward substance. Away from perception and toward reality. Away from performance and toward authenticity. This transformation creates an extraordinary calmness. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for decades. Every expectation, every judgment, every insecurity, every fear of rejection, every need for validation, added one by one, year after year. Eventually, the weight becomes normal. You forget what freedom feels like. Then one day you begin removing the burden. A little at a time. The need to impress. Gone. The need to explain. Gone. The need to be universally liked. Gone. The need to win every argument. Gone. The need to prove your worth. Gone. And with each burden released, life becomes lighter. Not easier. Lighter. The world remains unpredictable. People remain complicated. Criticism remains inevitable. But your relationship with these things changes. You stop carrying them. You stop internalizing them. You stop allowing them to define your emotional state. And what emerges in their place is serenity. Not the fragile serenity that depends upon favorable circumstances. The durable serenity that survives difficulty. The serenity Marcus Aurelius sought amid wars, political turmoil, illness, betrayal, and uncertainty. A serenity rooted not in control over the world, but mastery over oneself. Because ultimately, the greatest victory is not convincing others who you are. The greatest victory is knowing who you are regardless of what others believe. And once that knowledge becomes firm, something remarkable happens. You stop seeking permission to be yourself. You stop asking the world for validation. You stop negotiating your worth with strangers. You stop living as though your existence requires approval. And for perhaps the first time in your life, you experience the quiet dignity of inner freedom. The kind of freedom that cannot be granted by others. Because it was never theirs to give. There is perhaps no force more capable of awakening wisdom than the awareness of mortality. Not fear of death. Awareness of it. Marcus Aurelius returned to this reality repeatedly. Not because he was fascinated by endings. Because he understood that remembering death clarifies life. Most people live as though time is unlimited. They postpone important conversations, delay meaningful actions, hold on to resentments, obsess over trivial conflicts, worry endlessly about what strangers think, as if there will always be another year, another decade, another opportunity. But life offers no such guarantees. The clock moves whether we notice it or not. Each sunrise arrives carrying something precious away. A day that can never be recovered. A day that can never be repeated. A day exchanged permanently for whatever we chose to give our attention. And when viewed from this perspective, a question naturally emerges. How much of your life has been spent worrying about opinions that no longer exist? Think back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. How many judgments once felt devastating? How many criticisms kept you awake at night? How many rejections seemed unbearable? Where are they now? Most have vanished. The people who made them may have forgot them entirely. Some may no longer even be alive. Yet at the time, those opinions felt enormous. This is one of the great illusions of human existence. We grant temporary judgments permanent power. We sacrifice real moments for imagined evaluations. We surrender peace in exchange for approval that rarely lasts. Marcus Aurelius saw through this illusion. He understood that reputation is among the most fragile possessions a human being can pursue. It exists entirely in the minds of others. And the minds of others are constantly changing. Today they admire. Tomorrow they criticize. The day after they forget. History itself proves this truth. How many once famous individuals are now unknown? How many celebrated names have disappeared into silence? How many admired figures have been misunderstood by later generations? Fame fades. Recognition fades. Memory fades. Even empires fade. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire of his age. Yet he constantly reminded himself that both ruler and subject share the same destination. Dust. Time eventually absorbs every title, every achievement, every reputation, every public image. This realization may sound severe, but within it lies extraordinary freedom. Because once you truly understand the temporary nature of reputation, you stop organizing your life around it. You stop treating approval as a life purpose. You stop measuring your worth through public reaction. You stop sacrificing authenticity for acceptance. Instead, attention returns to what endures. Character, virtue, presence, meaning, the things that remain valuable even when nobody is watching. Imagine reaching the final years of life and looking back. Will it matter how many strangers approved of you? Will it matter how carefully you managed perceptions? Will it matter how often you avoided criticism? Or will something else matter more? The courage to live honestly. The willingness to remain true to your values. Their ability to love deeply. The commitment to act with integrity. The peace of knowing you lived according to your own conscience. These are the things mortality illuminates. Death strips away illusion. It reveals what was always important, and what was never important at all. The fear of judgment shrinks beneath this perspective, because you begin seeing how small most opinions truly are. A stranger forms a conclusion. A critic expresses disapproval. A crowd misunderstands your intentions. And then time continues moving. Life continues unfolding. The stars continue burning. The seasons continue changing. Reality itself remains untouched. The universe does not pause for human judgment. Why then should your peace depend upon it? This is not an invitation to become indifferent to others. Stoicism never taught indifference. It taught proportion. Care about people. Respect people. Learn from people. Serve people. But do not surrender your soul to them. There is a difference. A profound difference. One path creates connection. The other creates dependency. And dependency is dangerous because it places your emotional well-being into hands that were never meant to hold it. No human being can consistently provide the validation another person seeks. The demand is too great. The expectation is too fragile. Eventually, disappointment becomes inevitable. The Stoics understood this, which is why they continuously directed attention inward. Not toward selfishness, toward self-governance, toward mastery, toward the cultivation of an inner life strong enough to withstand external turbulence. Because storms will come, criticism will come, misunderstanding will come, rejection will come, loss will come. No philosophy can prevent these things, but wisdom can prevent them from ruling you. And perhaps that is the true peace of not caring what others think. Not that you become immune to criticism. Not that hurt disappears entirely. Not that emotions cease to exist. But that your center remains intact. Your identity remains rooted. Your worth remains unchanged. Your peace remains available, regardless of external noise. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean. Waves crash against the shore. Some gentle, some violent, some beautiful, some destructive. Yet beneath the surface turbulence lies immense depth. Stillness, silence, power. The Stoic mind seeks that depth. Not the absence of waves. The presence of stability beneath them. Because the world will always produce waves. Opinions, judgments, praise, blame, approval, rejection. These things belong to the surface. Character belongs to the depths. And the deeper you anchor yourself, the less power surface disturbances possess. This is what Marcus Aurelius spent a lifetime practicing. Not escaping the world. Remaining steady within it. Not avoiding criticism. Refusing to be defined by it. Not seeking approval. Seeking virtue. And in doing so, he discovered a freedom available to every human being. A freedom untouched by popularity. Untouched by status. Untouched by public opinion. The freedom to belong to yourself. The freedom to act according to conscience. The freedom to live according to nature. The freedom to walk your path without constantly looking over your shoulder for permission. Because in the end, the crowd cannot tell you who you are. Only your actions can. Only your character can. Only the quiet voice within can. And when you finally learn to trust that voice more than the noise around you, a profound transformation begins. The fear softens. The tension loosens. The endless performance ends. And in its place emerges something rare. Something powerful. Something deeply peaceful. The realization that you were never meant to live for the approval of others. You were meant to live in harmony with your own highest nature. And that realization changes everything. Because foremost of life, people are running. Running toward approval. Running away from criticism. Running toward acceptance. Running away from rejection. The tragedy is not the running itself. The tragedy is that many never stop long enough to ask where they are going. Imagine spending decades climbing a ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. This is what happens when a life is built around external validation. The destination appears meaningful from a distance. But upon arrival, something feels strangely empty. The praise arrives, yet peace does not. The recognition arrives, yet fulfillment does not. The approval arrives, yet the hunger remains. Because approval can never satisfy a need that only self-respect can fulfill. This is one of the deepest truths hidden within Stoic philosophy. No amount of admiration can compensate for self-betrayal. No amount of applause can silence a guilty conscience. No amount of recognition can replace inner alignment. The world may celebrate you while your soul remains restless. Or the world may misunderstand you while your soul remains at peace. The Stoics always preferred the second outcome. Marcus Aurelius certainly did. Because he understood that the final judge of your life is not the crowd. It is your own conscience. At the end of each day, when the noise fades and silence returns, there remains a single question. Did I live according to my values? Not according to expectations. Not according to trends. Not according to public opinion. According to my values. This question carries extraordinary power because it returns responsibility to where it belongs. Within, the crowd cannot answer it. Your critics cannot answer it. Your admirers cannot answer it. Only you can. And this is why self-respect becomes more valuable than approval. Approval fluctuates. Self-respect endures. Approval depends upon others. Self-respect depends upon you. Approval can be withdrawn. Self-respect can be cultivated. The older you become, the more obvious this distinction becomes. You begin noticing people who spent their entire lives chasing acceptance. People who adapted themselves to every audience. Changed themselves for every relationship. Compromised themselves for every opportunity. And despite receiving approval, they never found peace. Because peace was never hiding inside approval. Peace was hiding inside authenticity. Inside integrity. Inside alignment between action and belief. This alignment creates a kind of quiet strength that cannot be manufactured. A person who possesses it no longer feels compelled to perform. No longer feels compelled to prove. No longer feels compelled to compete for validation. They move through life differently. More calmly. More deliberately. More freely. There is a dignity that emerges when a human being finally stops asking the world for permission to exist. A dignity beyond confidence. Beyond reputation. Beyond achievements. The dignity of self-possession. The dignity of belonging to yourself. Marcus Aurelius cultivated this dignity amidst unimaginable responsibility. Wars surrounded him. Political intrigue surrounded him. Disease surrounded him. Uncertainty surrounded him. Yet throughout his writings, one theme appears repeatedly. Guard the inner citadel. Protect the mind. Protect character. Protect judgment. Because these things remain yours even when everything else changes. Empires can collapse. Fortunes can disappear. Relationships can end. Bodies can weaken. Reputations can shift. But character remains. And character becomes especially important when viewed through the lens of mortality. One day, every human being faces the same reality. The final sunset. The final conversation. The final breaths. Titles will not matter. Status will not matter. Approval will not matter. The crowd will not matter. Only the life you actually lived will matter. Only the choices you actually made. Only the person you actually became. This awareness can be frightening. Or it can be liberating. The Stoics chose liberation. Because mortality reveals what deserves attention. And what deserves release. Many worries disappear when viewed from the perspective of life's finite nature. The argument becomes smaller. The criticism becomes smaller. The embarrassment becomes smaller. The rejection becomes smaller. Even the approval becomes smaller. Everything finds its proper proportion. And within that proportion emerges gratitude. Gratitude for time. Gratitude for existence. Gratitude for the opportunity to live according to one's deepest values. Not perfectly. No Stoic sought perfection. Only progress. Only honesty. Only continual effort toward virtue. That effort is enough. Far more than enough. Because a meaningful life is not built through flawless execution. It is built through sincere intention. Through repeated courage. Through daily integrity. Through the willingness to remain true to oneself even when doing so carries a cost. Especially when doing so carries a cost. Anyone can follow the crowd. Anyone can seek approval. Anyone can surrender their judgment to public opinion. But it takes courage to stand quietly within your own convictions. It takes courage to disappoint people. To be misunderstood. to be criticized, to be different, to choose authenticity over acceptance. Yet this courage always rewards those who practice it. Not with fame, not with universal admiration. Something far more valuable. Freedom, real freedom. The freedom to speak honestly. The freedom to act consciously. The freedom to live deliberately. The freedom to remain at peace regardless of public reaction. And perhaps this is the ultimate gift Marcus Aurelius offers us across the centuries. A reminder that peace is not found by controlling what others think. Peace is found by releasing the need to control it. A reminder that worth is not granted by crowds. It is discovered within. A reminder that the opinions of others belong to them. But your character belongs to you. A reminder that life becomes infinitely lighter when you stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours. And as you grow older, perhaps this becomes the most beautiful lesson of all. Not everyone will understand you. Let them. Not everyone will agree with you. Let them. Not everyone will approve of you. Let them. Not everyone will see your intentions. Let them. Not everyone will recognize your value. Let them. Their opinions cannot diminish what is real. The sun remains the sun whether clouds obscure it or not. The mountain remains the mountain whether people admire it or ignore it. And your worth remains your worth whether others recognize it or not. You do not need universal approval to live a meaningful life. You do not need constant validation to experience peace. You do not need permission to become who you are meant to be. All you need is the courage to trust your own conscience. The wisdom to focus on what you can control. The humility to accept what you cannot. And the strength to walk your path without surrendering your soul to the noise around you. Then something extraordinary happens. The fear begins fading. The performance begins ending. The burden begins lifting. The need begins dissolving. And beneath it all, something that was always there finally reveals itself. A calm mind. A steady heart. A free spirit. A life no longer governed by approval. A life no longer defined by judgment. A life rooted in character rather than reputation. And in that quiet freedom, you discover what Marcus Aurelius knew all along. The greatest peace is not found when everyone approves of you. The greatest peace is found when you no longer need them to.